Hello, and welcome to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast.
Join us as we celebrate the remarkable contributions of women to this timeless art form, featuring insightful interviews, captivating stories, and performances that showcase their talent and dedication.
I'm your host, Bridget Gerard, classical guitarist and member of the Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra.
And I am your host, Mariette Stephenson, founder, music director, and conductor of the Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra, and professor of guitar at Wilfrid Laurier University and the University of Waterloo.
We are excited to bring you the lives and music of these classical guitar heroines, past and present, and to share with you their enduring impact on music and our world.
You are listening to part 2 of our discussion with Kathy Acosta Zavala, discussing the life and music of Vahdah Olcott Bickford. This is my recording of Beggar's Tale by Vahdah Olcott Bickford, recorded for this podcast. This piece is from the Blue Book of Favorites for Guitar, courtesy of the American Guitar Society, and is available on the American Guitar Society website.
That was Mariette Stephenson playing Beggar's Tale by Vahdah Olcott Bickford, recorded for this podcast. This piece is from the Blue Book of Favorites for Guitar, courtesy of the American Guitar Society, and is available on the American Guitar Society website. I have actually been working through Vahdah's method books, and I find her voice and her compositions really interesting because they are so very different from the male composers' pieces that I've been playing up till now. How would you describe her composition style?
Sensible and melody driven. That's what she was concerned about.
Right.
She wanted the guitar to shine and the melodies to be the most beautiful thing you had ever heard. Her method book is interesting because with her method book, it comes a time where there's the prologue, right, to her method book, and she talks about modern. She repeats the word modern more times than I could ever count. But that's what you first see when you open her method book. It's 120 pages, and she will follow up with other. She did the advanced method after.
Yep, right.
And then she also did little short publications that are of educational purposes, Carl Fisher and Oliver Ditson. And when her method was published in 1921, it was a compendium not only of the European legacy that she was trying to uphold, right? The Carcassi, the Soar, and she talks about this stuff in her prologue. But it's how do we teach this to Americans? That's how I felt. How do we even bring it up to include some tunes that would be more relatable to them? Or everything is in Spanish in those methods. So how do we create a language? Because even her first page, right? It has all the terms of how she's going to do what she's trying to tell you, so that you don't have to have her as a teacher, but you can learn on your own. I think that's what I took about that method. one of the funny things I had to learn was she doesn't write a 1 or a 2 on fingering, right? She puts dots.
Dots. Yeah.
Right? She's establishing a method for her teachings, her legacy of, okay, I studied with Ferrer, I studied with blah, blah, blah. These are the things that they taught me. And how do you go from 101 lessons to establishing a methodology and a symbolic language that will transfer into a book at this time that will only solidify guitar? And this is part of her legacy of individualizing the guitar. Remember, she came from the B&G movement. The guitar was conglomerate with everything else that's living in there. You know, you went to the Guild convention and you could hear a banjoist, and you can hear a guitarist. It would be as is. She's trying to build the guitar to be the next piano. Let's just say that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what she's concerned about. She wants it to be known for its beauty and its capabilities and as a solo instrument on a concert hall. And she played many concerts as a soloist. So when she's writing this method, she's transferring all of that into how do I transfer that to a regular lay person that will pick up my method and will come to the guitar and learn it as either an amateur lover or could potentially build solid foundations so that later another teacher could continue education. At that time, classical guitar education was not what it is right now. It's not like you could just go to your local community college or your local university and find a teacher. That plethora of education that was easily available to one was not existent in 1921.
Right.
And so she is building something that at that time was very essential for people to be able to pick up a book and learn that in mainstream publications. It's very interesting, but one of the things with her life and her career that I always struggle with, a lot of people want her to be the next Segovia or like wanted her to be as big as Segovia. But she's building a very different type of legacy, which is why her contributions were not studied and were not valued.
Right.
Because her contributions are about continuance of not just your regular future virtuoso that's going to go into a concert hall, but it was about viewing the guitar as a wholesome instrument for many more other purposes.
Right.
And that doesn't devalue her playing. She was a great player, and she did all this fantastic. She was extremely virtuosic. I mean, reviews from her concerts were, oh my God, like the lady guitar, all these fantastic things that she was known as like the lady of the guitar in the United States.
Wow.
She really had such a stature. She knew everyone. She kept records. She kept her collections. She fostered guitar culture in the United States for almost the entire 1900s.
Wow. Yeah. And that is incredibly important. It's funny that you say that she uses the word modern so much, because she also talks about soar so much, which is so traditional, right? Because there are all these little, in her method books, there are all these little quotes at the tops and the pages and in between pieces from all sorts of different artists and musicians and writers and things. But I actually trimmed off all my nails because I always have problems growing my nails to any kind of playing length anyway. And so when I did Happy Days of Yore, I had very, very short nails. Like you can say they're non-existent at this point. I found the piece came out that much better because I felt like I was being more true to the way it was written. You've touched a little bit about it, but I kind of want you to go a little bit deeper into the pedagogical importance of her method book.
Disclaimer, I didn't do a degree in education, and I don't specialize on method books. This is the PhD in me talking. I think at that time, one of the books that was already on the market is from an African American who wrote his own book. Holland had his own book.
Oh, okay.
So it's not that there wasn't a method book in America at that time.
Right.
Let's be very clear. There were. And the most robust example is Holland's book. There was no method book from a woman. And the market for the amateur guitarist was who? In the 1880s, 1870s, 1890s, they were trying to grow and get women to play. So for a woman to come out in 1921 and say, oh, I'm the teacher.
Yeah,
it was huge. The barriers that she broke are tremendous in her career. So from a pedagogical standpoint, I don't know if a woman at that time would have realized how big it was. I would think yes, because they were fighting to even vote at that time. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right,
1920s is when we get the vote in the United States. Her book
Right.
comes out in 1921.
Before
So
that.
yeah, like I would think that that was huge, would give her such credibility in the field. And pedagogically, it merged, yes, everything from Zor. And I'm not going to say it wasn't traditionalist and it didn't have a romanticized view of their teachings, but it brought that into mainstream America in a way that was easy to digest. And one of the things that I appreciated about her method were her willingness to always consider what the pupil was learning and very goal oriented. It's like you had your teacher with you, right? Because she goes, this exercise, this is what you're going to learn, this is what you're going to do, and this is the purpose. So it's like she's there whispering to you. And by 1921, she had already written columns for many, many years, establishing a presence, establishing a voice within the field. And it's not like she came in and just wrote a book. No, she spent years looking at SOAR, looking at all these other method books, gathering the resources to write it, and for lay Americans to just go and buy it.
Right.
Or they could write to her and she would mail them a copy. You have all of this coming in together. And back then, it's not like you could just call or email a friend. No, it would be the post office, and it would take a long time for that letter to first come in. So she was already catering to an audience that had a love for the instrument, or trying to grow that audience.
Right, right.
I wonder what you thought about the book.
I love the book. I think it's really amazing. It is exactly the way you describe it, where she gives you these little pieces of information before the pieces, and she tells you how to play them. She gives you little instructions about playing. Your thumb should slide from this string to the next string without lifting. And I love that, because sometimes when you're playing pieces, I've been working through books with the Royal Conservatory of Music here in Canada, and they just give you the piece. They don't tell you anything about it, and they naturally assume that you're going to be studying with a teacher. And here, she is your teacher, telling you exactly what you should be learning. She has a whole page on explaining how to play chords and different ways that they're described, the little symbols around them. So you play this chord this way, you play this chord with a strum. It's wonderful. It is like she's chatting with you. Here is a recording of Vahdah Olcott Bickford of her arrangement of Prelude, Opus 28, number 20 by Chopin for solo guitar. This recording is courtesy of Robert Zaidman.
We just heard a recording by Vahdah Olcott Bickford of her arrangement of Prelude Opus 28, number 20 by Chopin for solo guitar. This recording is courtesy of Robert Zaidman. You are listening to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast. So, Kathy, as documented in your thesis, and I'm going to give the title for people who are interested in looking it up, Toward a History of the Institutionalization of the Classical Guitar, Vahdah Olcott Bickford and the Shaping of Classical Guitar Culture in the 20th Century America. Vahdah corresponded with many guitarists around the world, as you have pointed out, including Madame Katerina Pratten, and that Vahdah purchased many of her scores directly from Pratten. And I'm curious, what was the relationship and the nature of their correspondence?
She didn't write directly with Pratten. She wrote and corresponded with her sister, which one was Madame Julia Pelser. That's the link between. Okay. I get this question a lot, especially because there was a whole revival about Pratten's music, and I had to say I played many of her compositions for my dissertation recital because it's just so wonderful and so joyful. Her music is pure joy to me. It's beautiful and it's elegant. I find her compositions to be very elegant to my taste. And with this whole revival, Vahdah includes several of her Pratten's arrangements and transcriptions in the early years of the AGS repertoire and also in concerts. And she would write beautiful programs. So she corresponds directly with the sister, with Pelser. And in these letters, they're very transactional. Okay. You know, she wants a transcription, or she's like, what else do you have? How much are you going to charge me? And then, you know, she would send the money, get the transcription, get the arrangement. So she didn't really correspond directly with Pratten, but she does have correspondence in her trove that's very valuable with other people. There's the whole situation, Mertz. There is the Mertz manuscripts for her widow. And I remember that somehow they end up with Vahdah.
Interesting.
So
that is fascinating because Mertz died, I think in 1850, thereabouts?
Yes, and it wasn't a direct connection because there's a letter from Sprenzinger who's updating Americans on an IGV publication, which is the International Geristische Vereinigung. Which is one of the guitar societies that precedes the model that she will create in the United States in 1923. And he's the one that's announcing the purchase of Mertz manuscripts from her widow. And somehow those end up in the States through another contact. And this is like, but she knew about it. And she's staying up to date with all these things that are moving across the world. Wow. Just to make sure that, you know, she has the latest music. She's ordering from catalogs. Half of her collection has catalogs, like just random advertisement of catalogs from European collections. And so she would circle what she wanted and then email them so that the works would arrive to her collection. No, she didn't correspond directly with Pratten. She did include her arrangements, her transcriptions. And she does have those in her collection. And yeah, she corresponded with many other people and was always in the know of what was happening, where the scores were, who had the scores, and how she could obtain them.
I just wanted to point out that the theme song to the podcast is Madame Sidney Pratten from Vahdah Olcott Bickford's archives titled Estudiantina. And it was because of you, Kathy, because you wrote about that. And I was like, I want to find out more about this Pratten music in these archives. Give a plug here. The Kitchener-Waterloo Guitar Orchestra performed them. And this was in 2024, so that's online. But yeah, it's because of all of your fantastic research, Kathy. And we can credit you with discovering our theme song.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad my dissertation bears some fruits of musical discovery. Yeah, her collection is so amazing. So amazing.
Yeah. Well, we know that Vahdah passed away in 1980, and her collection of guitars, musical scores, and correspondence, as you've pointed out, was donated to the California State University at Northridge. And let's just kind of delve into this. How important is her archive to guitar? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear directly from you.
Vahdah fostered, promoted, and enriched classical guitar culture in America during the 20th century. Her collection is I'm going to give you several answers. For researchers, it's just a treasure trove. And I've said this word before because she curated the knowledge of just guitar stuff for you to go through her collection and quickly access. I cannot give a value to that because it's investment on the time she had to look up those catalogs, write those letters, get the actual manuscript, or in this case, a published score, back to her, put it in her collection, and then kept it for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much easier to be able to do research on American culture in the 20th century because of her. She kept all those records so that one day people like me and other scholars that are coming up can go and research this and research the many lives that came before us and built a legacy that we now call classical guitar in America in the 21st century. Without those figures, there wouldn't be that. As far as monetary value, I think it's invaluable. I know some of her most expensive instruments were lost. I wrote, I think this is in a footnote in my dissertation, footnotes or read footnotes.
I do.
Oh, great. Thank you, Bridget.
And I did read that. I was so heartbroken.
Her collection was very valuable. She does have, in early catalogs of Martin guitars, she had one of the first models ever built for a woman. So she has an Ethel Lucretia Olcott model.
Wow.
Right.
That it's her, like it was built for her.
For her.
Yeah. I believe that one is still at the collection. I saw one, but I didn't know if that was the one because I didn't sit down to measure and do the analysis that would have been needed. Her collection, its value lays in our imagination and our need for discovery and asking questions. Right. She left the documents there. You have her correspondence, you have her journals, you have all of her scores, which is incredibly invaluable. She has such an amazing collection of scores. Like you were mentioning, you just went and and there you go. A work of Pratten that is not commonly available. And it, but you had to have the inquisitiveness and imagination to ask questions.
And read your thesis.
Well, and read my thesis.
And definitely read her thesis. I mean, for those people who are listening, it is such an enjoyable book to read. Honestly, it was so wonderful.
Well, thank you. But yeah, that's what I like to say about her archives. She left everything there. Absolutely everything in that archive. And there are other archives in the United States that are very, very important. There are other collections in other libraries across the United States that are also incredible. Caldwell has done an incredible archivist job of putting together all of the volumes of journals from the BMG movement. I mean, he has all this other stuff in his website. If those listening to the podcast have never come across his name and the extensive research he has done, go to his website. It's incredible. And so her archives, she documented every piece of so that when we ask questions, we have a resource to go ask questions to. And I think that's where the value lies. She also kept archival documents on the formation of the American Guitar Society to such detail that we know at what time the meeting ended on the first night, which was around 10 p.m. for you all wondering. Minute notes, all this stuff. I mean, I can tell you who was a member in which year. Everything was in there.
Fantastic.
I have tried to put tables on my dissertation. So if you just want to go to the appendixes, like all of her performances are documented and all stuff. So I did do a lot of the data gathering. She had scrapbooks, which were how I learned about her life. She knew she would be important someday, okay? No, I'm kidding. At that time, scrapbooking was a very common hobby.
Popular
Yes.
activity.
Very popular activity. So it's not as like, oh, she knew she was gonna be important. No, but she also knew she was gonna be important, because I don't know of many people that would have kept not only scrapbooks of her life, but also scrapbooks of the AGS. She has like Christmas cards that were sent to AGS members. I mean, the level of detail kept in these scrapbooks gives you a picture of organization that she wanted. I discovered a letter from 1915, and it's not a letter, it's an article, but it was dated 1915, and it's her first detail of the organization she wants to found. Gertrude Miller had tried to found an American Guitar Society early in the 1900s, and she was not able to do it. But Vahdah replied that she wanted to join. And this is where you start like kind of piecing all of these things together. She kept all those records. So when I'm asking questions and when I'm wondering things, I'm going through her archive. I'm having the patience to read all these letters, trying to piece together all the information, because she left it there for us to ask questions. And I think that's the beauty of it. She saw the need for a library, for a like a repository of scores just for the guitar. And that is something that we see in the 1915 letter. So this is not something new. Like, this is not something that she just started collecting later. No, all her documents are kept from very early on. Photos of her house after it was condemned due to the earthquakes and the flooding and all this stuff they were just devastating that house. But she took the time to move those piles to a place where they would be safe. Like, Purcell writes about them going with his TAs. Love TAs, by the way. Without TAs, that archive would not have been moved,
That's
apparently.
right.
So, and at the end, there's a photo and the names of all the TAs, so they were credited. It's all this labor of love where she knew how valuable it would be, and she knew that someday guitar culture would be strong enough in the United States that somebody would say yes to archiving those things. And somebody would come along and want to read all this stuff. And she knew the future that she was building. It's what I'm trying to say. She knew that the United States would become what it is now. We have so many guitar societies everywhere. We have amateur players, we have professional players, we have everything in between. We have the college infrastructure and all this stuff. I can't credit everything to her, but she played that small role in making sure that that was even possible.
We will now listen to a recording by Vahdah Olcott Bickford of her arrangement of Prelude Opus 28, number 7 by Chopin for solo guitar. This recording is courtesy of Robert Zaidman.
That was a recording of Vahdah Olcott Bickford of her arrangement of Prelude Opus 28, number 7 by Chopin for solo guitar. This recording is courtesy of Robert Zaidman. You are listening to the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast. Kathy, what do you see as Vahdah's legacy to the guitar community, and what would you like her to be most remembered for?
That is a very deep question. Her legacy, from my dissertation's perspective and from the area that I chose to study about her, because she's a kaleidoscope, right? She has so many ways of looking at her. You could single out any way and then make a determination what was her legacy. For me, it's the American musicological framework and the institutions that she left behind.
Right.
Without that, I think the United States would have forgotten about the guitar.
You think so?
I think so. I think if it's not being championed at that community level,
Right.
it would disappear.
Right.
Because at that time, there weren't schools, there weren't universities. The guitar has been passed on culturally through that framework,
Right.
through the communities coming together and wanting to pursue further studies on the guitar, wanting to create societies that would present concerts for the guitar. We weren't mainstream classical.
That's true.
We just weren't. And a lot of that work comes from Segovia and other virtuoso performers who start getting into, promoters. At that time, it was the promoters that would choose to pay somebody to come and take the financial risk. At that time, you could actually make money out of presenting somebody. And that framework of nonprofit work for the guitar made it possible for all the other frameworks that sprawled across the country in the later decades. I think somebody else would have done it. Papas, for instance, in Washington, D.C., he was very adamant about also the curation of a library. He had similar goals, but just not quite the fertile soil to be able to produce something like that, or the network that you needed. Because she had the network, she had the connections, she knew the people, she was married to one that was part of a very large organization for many, many years. So I think that's the legacy that I most cherish about her, having the incredible vision of saying, we need to champion just the guitar outside of the plectral instruments, establishing that one goal. And then at the start of the AGS, it had an international reach. So there is that international reach until right before the Second World War, which changes the landscape of the world and doesn't just change the landscape of America. But at that time, she's not just a local organization. She is publishing all these books and all this publishing fund to make sure that the music of the guitar was still spread throughout the country and throughout countries across the United States. The international membership wasn't very large, I have to say. From records, I've only found 3-4 names of people that actually stayed within the publication records and international records to get those scores sent to them. It kept through 2 wars so that then we could establish conservatories and universities and establish a more professional framework for the instrument. But it started on the amateur level of people coming together and wanting to play at the guitar orchestra and having the whereabout that maybe those people later will become patrons and will fall in love with the guitar. And so I do think that kept the guitar at a community level organization that we still benefit from today. So that's that part of the legacy. I wish she would be known more for the pedagogical and the transcription prowess that she had. She transcribed so many things. She arranged so many things. And I have not had time to give her justice on that front. I've not had time yet to play her works as much as I would like to. I really focused on her institutional pioneering. It was a part of musicology that really brought a passion to me of understanding that women were at the center of the history and still are.
Right.
She created jobs for all of us, y'all.
That's true.
Like, I don't think people understand this. Like, now guitar societies actually have revenue for a nonprofit model. They have their boards, but they hire teachers for their outreach. They hire conductors for the community ensemble. I mean, and that was her vision. She wanted to get paid. There's just no money at the time. But she made sure that we would have jobs. That administrators would eventually get paid.
Right.
Unfortunately, she worked an invisible career for over 50 years and never got a dime for it. But it's through the work of those women who paved the way for there to be value to things.
That's beautiful. because you're right. She did pave the way for women who, like yourself, like Mariette, who work in music and have careers now. Where can our listeners find out more about Vahdah, and where can they find her music to be able to play it for themselves?
Absolutely. So I have two resources for you. The first one, I have to credit the amazing, amazing people of the American Guitar Society. Gregory Newton is present still. But there are
Mhm.
just so many people in that organization that have kept her legacy alive. So if you're looking for where to get started with her music or the publications that she did with the American Guitar
Right?
Society, which were many,
Yes.
there is a website, American Guitar Society, I think it's .com. And that website has all of her works digitized. This is a huge program that they ran with the Centennial. So in part of turning 100 years, they revamped their website, and now you can find all of those publications online. You can, if you wish to put a donation through, most gracious to receive any kind of donation if you, but the download is free. So the donation
Mhm.
is just if you see value in that, you can donate. They incur costs to do all the digitization and all the revamping, but they're easily available on that one resource. So if you're just curious, when I get started, that's a great resource. It's free. And then the other
Right.
resource is her archive.
Mhm.
Oh, and my dissertation is shameless self-promotion in also the American Guitar Society website. I made it easily available and free to anybody who wanted, or you can look it up if you have a school, a university. It'll appear somewhere. You can download it.
Right. Right.
But that website has everything, and I think they also have my soundboard articles because I wrote two
I
articles.
believe they
Yeah,
do.
because
I
they
believe
they
they do.
always
Yeah.
send me requests and stuff, so everything is in there that I've written about the organization. I don't know if they included the centennial lecture I did or not, but I did send it over to them. I think they might have uploaded it, I'm not sure. Anyhow, that's another piece. And then her archives. So they used to be in Oviatt Library, but that changed its name. So it's now at the it's if you look up Vahdah Olcott Bickford collection, it's at the International Guitar Research Archives. IGRA is what it's
Okay.
called. Super easily available. The people at the archives, I've worked with Julieta for many years now, and they're just absolutely wonderful. You can, if you see something, for instance, on her, there's a catalog of everything in her collection, so you can quickly download the catalog. And if you see a score you would like, then you can do a digitization request, or you can go to the archives if you're there in person. Those are the research about her that is mostly available and quickly to access.
Awesome. And where can our listeners find out more about your work, Kathy, especially your music? You've mentioned where we can find your dissertation, but what about your music?
So once upon a time, I played guitar. No, I'm kidding. I still play guitar, but I was actually a concert performer, and then I switched to this route. But I do have a YouTube page that has some of my videos. I'd never published an album. I really want to about her works and just her life, and that probably will be upcoming. So I do have a YouTube channel. I don't have an updated website, everyone. I know many send me requests through that website. I promise there will be a new website, hopefully this year.
Awesome.
We would like to thank the fantastic Dr. Kathy Acosta Zavala for speaking with us today about her research on Vahdah Olcott Bickford. We would also like to thank Mariette Stephenson, Candace Mowbray, Jack Silver, Robert Zaidman, and Neil Glad for allowing us to use the music you heard in this episode. We would also especially like to thank the American Guitar Society for their generous support and contributions to this episode. And I would like to send an extra special thank you out to Mariette Stephenson for all her hard work in tracking down the permissions from the copyright holders to be able to play the music that you hear in our podcast. These episodes with Vahdah Olcott Bickford's music have been extra challenging, and Mariette has been amazing. Follow the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. If you enjoyed what you heard, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our Substack newsletter for updates. If you love our podcast and want to support us, consider visiting our Ko-fi account. You can find the link in our Facebook and Instagram pages. Every contribution, no matter the amount, helps us to stay independent and keep the podcast accessible to everyone. And remember, if you are a woman who plays classical guitar, you too are a classical guitar heroine. Thank you for joining us on the Classical Guitar Heroines podcast.